Welcome to Brandon Sanderson Book Reviews. We have today with us Quinn and special guest Dominic. Today we're going to be talking about Mistborn, The Final Empire, so stay tuned. In the book, our main character is Vin, a small beggar child who's been on the streets of Luthadel for many years trying to make a living. Together, she finds a mentor in Kelsier who is planning to overthrow the Empire and the mythical God Emperor, the ruler of all, the Lord Ruler. With him, she becomes stronger to eventually they challenge the Emperor. Their abilities allow them to get stronger and eventually overthrow them, and at the end of the book, we end it with the Lord Ruler being defeated and killed, and the new empire being created. So, normal Allomancers, which are only nobles, if you're an Allomancer, you can only use one of these powers, meaning you can only drink and activate one of these metals, while Mistborn, Vin, and her mentor, Kelsier, along with the Lord Ruler, can use all of them, making them much more powerful than the common Allomancer. Now, as a small clarification, pulling and pushing on metals is almost like if you actually use your body weight, and if you physically pushed a stone, if you push a giant boulder, you're going to be pushed back by it. However, if you push a small pebble, you're going to push it forward. It has that effect, but it only works on metals, and you can do it at a distance, allowing you to throw yourself or pull stuff into you. Along with, for zinc and brass, soothing and rioting, all this means is inflaming or depressing emotions. So, if you burn brass, you can make someone, say, not feel as excited or as anxious. But if you riot their emotions, you can instead make them feel way more scared or make them feel way more confident in their abilities. Along with copper and bronze, bronze allows you to see someone that is burning a metal, while copper allows you to hide that. Tin and pewter are pretty self-explanatory by themselves. They allow you to see, tin allows you to see better, hear better, taste better, feel better, everything. While pewter makes you stronger, faster, better reflexes, everything physical, balance, everything.
So one of the main focuses, or not main focuses, but things that they talk about in this book are the Steel Inquisitors. They have steel spikes through their eyes that protrude out the back of their head, and they're really shrouded in mystery. You don't understand how they see, how they're even living right now, but they're all Mistborns, and more powerful Mistborns than any of the others. And it's something that even by the end of the book you don't fully understand. And it's one of the more important aspects of the book is how you can't really stand up to these things. You can run away. You might be able to fight one, but if one tracks you down and is just dead set on following you and killing you, there's really not much you can do. And it's a big overarching fear of staying in. You can't really set up an outpost in the city and have it be known by the general populace because you're just going to get hunted down and slaughtered. So a lot of it is running and hiding from them.
Yeah, they feel like they're almost an insurmountable force, which is interesting because we do see they're not mortal, but it's still a mystery as to why they're so powerful, how they can see, how they can live with spikes going through their brain. Now, reading this book, I would say it's definitely enjoyable, one of Brandon Sanderson's better works. In my opinion, I'd give it a 4 out of 5 stars. Quinn, how about you?
I definitely agree with that statement. I've read a couple of other Brandon Sanderson's works. It's not his number one work, but this first book is definitely a really well-made book. I'd say a 4 out of 5 is definitely my opinion as well.
Dominic?
For me, being new to his works and it also being my first book from him, currently it's definitely a 5 out of 5. I don't really have a perspective against others to put it against, but I enjoy it great.
Quinn, did your perspective on the other books change your rating?
Oh yeah, when I first picked up Mistborn, and I started off with the Steelheart trilogy, which is another phenomenal book series. Not really in the past fantasy realm, but another great series. I picked up Mistborn right after that. Loved it. One of the best books I've ever read. Definitely a 5 out of 5. But I picked up this book called Way of Kings, one of Brandon Sanderson's earlier books, but one of my favorite, probably my favorite book I've ever read. It's a huge book. It's great. 5 out of 5 on that, and it really dropped Mistborn down because I really couldn't put it on par with Way of Kings the same way I had looked at it before.
Interesting. And why do you think that Mistborn? What do you think Mistborn didn't do that Way Kings did do?
I'm not really sure, to be honest. It's just kind of the charm of the book that really brought me into it. The world building I felt more in tune with. You got to learn a lot more about the book. Don't get me wrong, Mistborn is a phenomenal read. Is Brandon Sanderson's world building is just phenomenal across the board. I don't think that's probably his most enticing part of his books that I've read is how phenomenally he builds his worlds and how differently they are from his own, from our
And the
own world.
magic systems. Oh my god.
The magic systems
Great.
are always great. They're different, they're new, they're just completely abstract. And I just enjoyed Way of Kings' magic system and world building just a tiny bit more than I did Mistborn, and really just notched it up for me.
I do agree with the statement, although, in my opinion, a small critique of Mistborn is that while the world building was absolutely excellent, I would have preferred to see more outside of Luthadel, the main capital. I would have wanted to see more of the entirety of the Empire besides just one main city and a couple locations in the second city.
Yeah,
Is that just me, or do you feel that too?
I definitely feel that way as somebody who's only read the first book. I know you've read all 3 of the trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
Is that they don't really touch up outside of Luthadel. I know there's the mountains outside. I know there's the warfront. What is? Am I wrong about that?
Currently, I don't believe there is a war, being that the Empire is absolute.
The Empire is absolute, but they have like out on the borders of on the outside they have what are those monsters that they talk about that are
Yes, they have small rebellions they have needed to crush, and some more information on the warfare would have actually been interesting, being that we only saw a small-scale battle and no actual war.
yeah, that's something that was a bit lacking in, but that's okay.
What do you feel, Dominic?
Isolating the book, if you were talking about the whole series, I would love to get as much information as I can on it, and I feel like being trapped in Luthadel the whole time is definitely confining, but from the perspective of the book and what it's trying to be, I think it fits. It follows a character rather than the world, but the world itself is so great that you can't just ignore it.
Speaking of a character, how do you feel about Vin as a main character? Her growth and just her as a person.
In the beginning,
Can I say that a character is my child? Because it's great. Just it's the best.
In the beginning, I didn't really like Finn. It was understandable how she was confined, but it was, and frankly, I found it very over the top. It was justified, but as the book goes on, her character development really increases, and she learns to like be a person more than she has in the past, and it's really great meeting Venture and Kelsier and just Ham and everybody in the book really opens her up as a character, and you learn a lot more about her, and I love that development. But in the beginning, it's a little dissatisfying how closed-minded she is, I guess.
Yeah. I think characters and character arcs are really a strong suit of Brandon's.
Definitely.
Like, reading multiple books around it, you always fall in love with them. And as Dominic said, it's gut-wrenching, like, in other books, when they die or when they go through very hard problems, and you really feel that.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
it feels terrible, but at the same time great, because you're really interested in the character, and you don't want anything bad to happen. You want them to succeed, but it makes it all the more satisfying when they do succeed, trudging through hardship.
Speaking of characters dying, how do you guys feel about Kelsier?
Kelsier as a character is entertaining. I find it interesting his psychological element of his beliefs, But I feel like there could have been more time devoted to actually digging into his character and mainly his relationship with his now dead wife. And that felt like it was surface level, and there could have been so much more to dig from.
Yeah.
There was definitely more behind his past, and he did kind of feel one-dimensional for a good part of the book, but I also feel like that was like purposeful. His character was trying to come off that way,
Yeah.
but I'd always enjoy more.
Of course, like a more secretive feel is what he's definitely going for. The other characters, though, Ham was personally my favorite. The Pewter Burner was ever so charming, and it kind of was a very odd thing to be what would be considered stereotypically the
thug.
unintelligent
They
form of
even call him that.
allomancy, which is Pewter Burner, which is increasing strength, speed, and reaction time, and of course balance, which is one of the more important features that you wouldn't really think about for physical enhancements. Is that he is a philosopher and a politician, and he really digs into actual ska rights. And this leads into the question: do nobles have a right by blood because of their natural allomancy? We're not including like bastard children and such to rule over the ska.
Well, I think some background information is needed to answer the question. Where in the book, only the nobles and the people of most power actually have the magic, actually have allomancy, and they have suppressed the ska and believe themselves above ska. And what Quinn's trying to ask is that justified because there are extra powers? Is there some divine force that truly believes they deserve this? And are they right to do what they're doing? My opinion, no, but I definitely feel like there's more to it. I definitely feel like something gave them this power, and something can allow them to. There's a reason they have this. And does it actually have anything to do with their actual treatment of others? Are they right to do this? What do you think?
I think in this case, because if you were to put it in the perspective of a person living in the world, clearly the noblemen aren't doing it for the betterment of the ska, how they're treating them. So it's a matter of whoever and whatever gave them the allomancy in the first place. It would be, are they in the right?
Yes.
It's a perspective setting.
It ties into our own historical beliefs of kings and God mandate. Were they in the right just because they're born at a higher station? I'd say no. But when you throw in magic and a truly invincible, overpowering force, does that change?
That's a great question.
In a way, yes. It's, like Dominic said, it's really truly a perspective thing. And if you're going by the standpoint of Lord Ruler is established as God because of his overwhelming power and immortality, effectively, even though that's proven untrue at the end of the book, his ability to kind of overrule everything and be acknowledged as God gives him more of a holy voice, and based on kind of a religious aspect of the whole book, which is an important part. I know in the second book, because once Kelsier died, his religion is formed around him.
Yes.
Yeah.
But does he? I don't. Should he really have a religion when there's a true God right there? Like, obviously Kelsier isn't God. We've seen him there, but people treat him, and it's interesting because it has parallels to the Lord Ruler's own godship. And do you believe the Lord Ruler is a god in any form?
Oh no, no, he's just accomplished what nobody has done before, and frankly, it could be accomplished if he let feruchemists and allomancers mingle, because it's at the end of the book where you realize that he is a feruchemist and allomancer at the same time. By burning the metals that have feruchemy stored inside of them, he makes them so much more potent. Which is why he can store his youth inside of the metal that stores youth. I don't really remember. They don't really go over that. They just say that there's a metal
Yeah,
that stores
we
youth.
should.
And he burns it, which
bef-
makes his years multiply by 10 or something. So he stores the youth inside of the metal. He burns the metal and then by burning the metal, he gains 10 times more years than he would have. Like if he stored 20 years of his youth inside the metal and then burned it, he would now have 200 years of longevity.
Yeah.
But there is more
No.
to it, being that his allomancy is much stronger than that of the normal person. As
Yes,
we see, his soothing and his rioting has a radius of a full mile, and he just gives off a natural soothing feeling. Why is he so much more powerful than the others if he doesn't have something special? It can't just be by birth, because his allomancy and his feruchemy wouldn't affect his actual straight powers with his overwhelming ability compared to people like Vin or Kelsier.
Well, what I noticed is that they don't really talk about his feruchemy. It doesn't seem like his feruchemy is any more potent, except for his alchemy, his allomancy improving his feruchemy. So the speculation that you can kind of have from reading the book and Sazen's translation of the book is that the person who was writing the book was in fact the chosen one predicted by the original feruchemy people, and the Lord Ruler himself usurped him when they were about to gain the powers, and this is said to be like what gave him his mistborn abilities. So one of the interesting parts of the book, and in my opinion, of most of Brandon Sanderson books, is hit the climax. They last for usually quite a while in comparison to the most of the book, and it really gives you a perspective and a lot of time explains things, but also promotes new questions. And one of Brandon Sanderson's strong suits is his ability to describe battle scenes, and that's one of the greatest parts of this final climax in this book, is when Vin faces off against the Lord Ruler himself. She does win, but it's in an interesting way, and with the help of Marsh, who was turned into an Inquisitor. We'll go over that in a bit. So, when they're fighting, the Lord Ruler is such a powerful allomantic force is that he can use steel pushing and iron pulling in a way that nobody else can. So, a general rule of allomantic steel push iron pull is that if it's embedded in your skin, in your body, they can't be steel push or iron pulled, which prevents people from literally just yanking the iron out of your blood or yanking the allomantic metals out of your stomach. And that's something that the Lord Ruler actually does in this, is he uses the metals that are in Vin's stomach and throws her around. And it's really changes the perspective on it, because it's not a general rule, and it shows that all rules can essentially be overpowered by the amount of force. And it kind of breaks down the magic system a little bit more. What we thought was a general rule of thumb was simply a limitation of most allomantic users and mistborns. So,
as we see as well, this is proven more, where some rules are not really rules of allomancy, they're just simply because we don't have enough power, where we realize the Inquisitors are actually powerful enough to break copper clouds, meaning copper as a metal normally blocks, while bronze can allow you to see. Now, Inquisitors are actually powerful enough to see through copper clouds, which we thought was not possible, but it proves us that power can trump just what we think the laws are of allomancy, which can intrigue a reader of what are the true laws, what are the breakable laws, and what are the true laws that no matter what cannot be stopped, like the laws of physics. Continue.
Yeah, that's an important thing to touch on, is a lot of the rules are broken in this book. In the first book at least, and I'm guessing by the end of the third book, you understand the rules in a bit more in-depth way. But what Vin does at the very end of the book is that she actually does the same thing as the Lord Ruler does, and she yanks the thing that the Lord Ruler was storing all of his feruchemical abilities inside of, that's like attached to his arm, and he essentially just withers and dies because she yanks it out of his arm. And it's something not even the Inquisitors can do, because obviously they would have done it. and she just tears it out of his arm, and it's really a crazy scene to see how simply somebody could have stopped the Lord Ruler if they just had the same power as Vin did in this book.
Yeah, but that's not inherently something that's a simple thing. Vin is very powerful for some interesting reasons.
Well, yeah, she's a direct descendant of an original, I guess, because that would be the same as the lead obligator being very purely bred, but it's a fear factor that the Lord Ruler has. Nobody stands against the Lord Ruler because he's just terrifying.
All right, so another very big part of this book is the idea of fake theology, with organizations like the Steel Ministry uplifting the idea that the Lord Ruler is this unkillable God figure to the point that even the main characters sometimes question their ability to get rid of him. And characters like Kelsier, after defeating the Lord Ruler, ending up having their own religion based off of them. He definitely planned it and had shown signs of planning something like this in the beginning when he was still alive, and he was talking about how religion can control people more than any allomancy can, and how it can get to more of the masses and give an idea out much easier than just one man can. We should definitely go into this.
Yeah, the theology and religion, it makes you kind of draw kind of comparisons between Kelsier and Lord Ruler. Well, Kelsier's dead, but Lord Ruler lived, but the kind of similarities that you start to draw are a little interesting.
Yeah,
especially with the constant of duality being with the push-pull of, and there's always two metals that correspond with each other, and an opposite, and one being it and the other being the opposite of it, which makes it feel like there's always this like duality between two forces.
Yeah, with and both of them ending up dead, of course, but the Lord Ruler having his religion based on keeping his power and seeming like he's an unkillable figure compared to Kelsier with his influence actually ending up becoming a martyr in death.
And the other thing that promoted this was after his death, he hired a mistwraith, but it was an elevated form of mistwraith. What was those called? A
Kendra.
A Kendra. And essentially, after Kelsier died, the Kendra ate Kelsier, which let the Kendra impersonate him fully, and he came to people in their houses and like promoted himself as a god and like in reincarnation, and then that definitely promoted people's idea of him being a religious figure,
it's definitely
and essentially being a god, but and his reincarnation, even though we know that it was in fact the Kendra, who also ate the ruler who Vin Valet acted under to get into social gatherings for the nobles, and that was actually just the Kendra the whole time playing him.
That was it was speculated towards the very beginning of the book as well, from someone who just very recently got out of the beginning sections of the book, how he was off-putting. Now, it does have some vibes of like Old Testament, New Testament.
How so?
That you can draw. Well, Old Testament being like the all-powerful God, and also how he's definitely seen as a force to be feared, more or less, through that, compared to the New Testament with some of Jesus's teachings and the reincarnation with like the Kendra impersonating
that is a little more
Kelsier.
like Kelsier's kind of thing versus the rulers. That is a kind
and it's also sequential. It's just another thing, especially since it is both theology. It's definitely a parallel that can be drawn, whether it was intentional or not, and it's quite interesting.
This has been Brandon Sanderson Book Reviews. I want to thank everyone for listening. These have been my guests Quinn and special guest Dominic, and I just want to tell you, keep reading.
Eating metal is ill-advised.